The meeting in Ankara today carries both symbolism and strategic weight. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan welcomed British Prime Minister Keir Starmer in the Turkish capital, marking the first official visit by the United Kingdom's new government to Turkey. The encounter is more than a ceremonial exchange. It arrives at a moment when European defence policy is being reshaped, NATO security calculations are shifting, and Ankara is once again positioned as a pivotal state between continents' interests and power spheres. The central topic anticipated in the discussions is the prospective delivery of Eurofighter Typhoon jets to Turkey, an issue that has become a test of not only defence industry coordination, but of broader political trust between Ankara and Western capitals. Turkey has long sought to modernise its air force as part of a broader military modernisation plan that includes domestic drone development, missile capabilities, and the introduction of new generation fighter projects. But the Eurofighter deal has been slowed by political hesitation, particularly within Germany, whose approval is required alongside the United Kingdom, Spain and Italy. Therefore, the presence of the British Prime Minister in Ankara today carries a clear strategic signal. London is ready to engage directly, even as other European capitals weigh their reservations. The atmosphere in Ankara during the meeting reflects an attempt at a reset. For the United Kingdom, the visit signals a desire to reinforce bilateral ties outside the framework of the European Union at a time when London is seeking new partners and new markets in the post-Brexit era. For Turkey, it is a chance to assert that its military and diplomatic autonomy does not preclude closer cooperation with NATO allies. If anything, Ankara aims to show it can act as a decisive broker across regions linking Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia and the Black Sea. The conversation between Erdogan and Starmer is also taking place against the backdrop of ongoing global and regional turbulence. In Ukraine, the war has settled into a grinding and unpredictable phase, placing demands on NATO's strategic readiness and supply systems. Turkey maintains a unique role, a NATO member that has also maintained communication channels with Moscow, overseeing grain corridor diplomacy and participating in negotiations that otherwise have few intermediaries. The United Kingdom, meanwhile, remains one of the strongest European supporters of Ukraine's territorial defence. Both governments emphasise sovereignty and territorial integrity, yet their approaches to Russia diverge in tone, reflecting their distinct geopolitical positions. The Middle East adds another layer of urgency. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has generated diplomatic pressure across the region. Turkey has consistently voiced sharp criticism of Israeli military operations, calling for immediate ceasefire arrangements and pushing for international accountability. The United Kingdom, balancing its diplomatic posture among the United States, European partners and regional actors, has attempted to frame its role as supportive of stabilisation and humanitarian access. The meeting in Ankara therefore involves not only defence industry negotiations, but also discussions over humanitarian corridors, regional diplomacy and the potential for broader coordination on post-conflict arrangements. Trade and economic ties are also at the forefront. The United Kingdom is already one of Turkey's largest trading partners, with a customs arrangement that remains active despite Brexit. However, both governments aim to expand cooperation in green energy, infrastructure, technology transfer and supply chain security. Ankara seeks investment inflows, while London is looking to diversify economic partnerships beyond traditional European markets. The Eurofighter negotiations, in this sense, are not only a defence sale, they are an indicator of whether both sides believe the relationship is entering a renewed phase of strategic trust. The setting of the meeting, the presidential complex in Ankara, emphasises the formality and weight of the occasion. Erdogan's leadership has been characterised by an assertive foreign policy that positions Turkey as a sovereign actor capable of negotiating on its own terms. Starmer's foreign policy approach, although still taking shape in his early months of office, has been defined by an emphasis on restoring structured diplomacy and strengthening alliances. The convergence of these two leadership styles creates a dynamic in which the relationship may find new common ground, even as differences remain. The Eurofighter Typhoon itself carries symbolic meaning. Developed as a product of multinational European cooperation, it requires collective political agreement for export. Turkey's request to purchase the aircraft has been supported by the United Kingdom, which has actively advocated for progressing the deal. But Germany has expressed concerns tied to broader policy considerations. Today's discussions in Ankara are an effort to reinforce political momentum behind the deal. while quietly signalling that bilateral channels can continue advancing even when multilateral discussions slow. Beyond aircraft procurement, the two countries are also examining cooperation in intelligence coordination, counter-terrorism and border security. Turkey's geographic position makes it a frontline state in terms of migration flows, energy transportation routes and conflict spillover risks. The United Kingdom seeks both stability in the region and reliable security partnerships east of Europe. In this sense, today's meeting reflects a pragmatic alignment of interests, even amidst differing perspectives on certain issues. Domestic politics in each country also shape the significance of the meeting. Erdogan has frequently used high-level diplomatic engagements to reinforce Turkey's global presence, presenting himself as a leader capable of negotiating with any counterpart, whether from the West, East or global South. For Starmer, the visit underscores a desire to reposition the United Kingdom as a serious diplomatic actor with sustained engagement rather than episodic intervention. The optics of meeting Erdogan, one of the most influential and long-standing leaders in NATO, reinforce that message. Energy cooperation is another layer that anchors the conversation. Turkey's role as an energy transit hub, receiving pipelines from the Caucasus, Central Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean, continues to shape European supply strategies. The United Kingdom, while less directly dependent on regional gas flows than other European states, has an interest in strategic diversification of global energy networks. This aligns with Turkey's ambitions to strengthen its own energy infrastructure and deepen its geopolitical value. During the meeting, both leaders are expected to reaffirm support for NATO cohesion, yet both also approach NATO from distinct perspectives. For Turkey, NATO is a security institution that must respect national sovereignty and allow strategic independence. For the United Kingdom, NATO is the central pillar of European collective defence. The challenge lies in navigating these differing emphases while sustaining practical cooperation in joint operations, training and regional intelligence coordination. In the broader context of European defence procurement, the meeting signals a shift toward more flexible, multi-actor alignment. The Eurofighter issue is not only about aircraft, it is a question of who Europe partners with in its long-term security architecture and how decision-making power is shared among NATO members and industries. If progress is made, it could reshape perceptions of Turkey's role in European defence supply chains and influence ongoing debates about strategic autonomy. At the same time, Ankara is continuing its development of indigenous defence platforms, including unmanned aerial systems, naval assets and next-generation aircraft projects. The United Kingdom has shown interest in cooperation in certain sectors, particularly aerospace research and joint development possibilities. While the Eurofighter conversation attracts headlines, the deeper discussions may involve shared industrial investments and technology collaboration frameworks that shape the long-term trajectory of bilateral defence cooperation. The regional picture underscores the complexity of these negotiations. In the Eastern Mediterranean, tensions remain over maritime boundaries, energy exploration and Cyprus. Diplomatic channels exist, but political mistrust continues. Any deepened defence cooperation between Turkey and a major European power has implications for these balances. Meanwhile, developments in the Caucasus, particularly after the recent shifts in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, add another dimension to the strategic coordination environment. Turkey's ties with Azerbaijan and the United Kingdom's growing interest in regional infrastructure and energy projects create another field of overlapping strategic concern. Against this full backdrop, the meeting between Erdogan and Starmer serves as both a test of diplomatic readiness and an indicator of strategic direction. If both sides articulate a shared vision, one that recognises each other's autonomy while reaffirming mutual strategic benefit, then the Eurofighter deal could serve as a pivot point for a broader renewal in cooperation. If hesitation prevails, the meeting may instead highlight the enduring complexity of Europe's defence ecosystem and Turkey's unique, often misunderstood position within it. However, the tone emerging from diplomatic sources suggests cautious optimism. London has repeatedly stated its support for advancing the Eurofighter process, reflecting both industrial capacity and political interest. Ankara has emphasised that it expects good faith among allies and that defence procurement should not become a tool of political conditionality. The mutual framing is clear. Partnership should be based on strategic calculation rather than domestic pressure or ideological framing. The symbolism of the seating arrangements, the gestures, the smiling exchanges, and the structured diplomatic choreography all serve to communicate a narrative of constructive engagement. Yet ultimately, progress will be measured not by ceremony, but by outcomes, whether approvals are secured, whether signatures are advanced, and whether timelines are clarified. For both leaders, the stakes are meaningful. For Turkey, the modernization of its air force plays a critical role in national security planning. For the United Kingdom, rebuilding structured global partnerships is central to defining its role in the world after years of transitions in leadership and foreign policy direction. This meeting provides an opportunity to demonstrate that constructive diplomacy remains possible even in a fractured international climate. As discussions conclude and delegations prepare to draft statements and joint readouts, diplomats will carefully calibrate language. They will aim to signal stability, progress, and alignment, without overstating agreements still in development. Observers will watch closely for phrasing regarding Eurofighter approvals, timelines, and procedural steps. The question is not merely whether the deal will be completed, but how swiftly and under what political framework. If the meeting today marks the beginning of a renewed strategic partnership, it will likely be reflected in continued high-level exchanges, expanded defence dialogues, and collaborative economic planning in the months ahead. If obstacles persist, attention will shift to how Ankara navigates alternative procurement paths and how London positions itself in a European defence landscape undergoing deeper transformation. But at least for today, the focus remains on the handshake, the shared table, and the deliberate signals of diplomatic intent. Ankara and London are engaging seriously at a time when serious engagement has become a rare commodity. The meeting stands as a reminder that international relationships are built not only on agreements and institutions, but on conversations, mutual recognition, and the willingness to work through complexity rather than avoid it. And in that sense, today's meeting carries meaning beyond aircraft specifications or agenda briefings. It reflects a moment in which two governments acknowledge the changing shape of the world, the shifts in power centres, and the need to craft adaptable, durable partnerships that respond to new realities. Whether this moment leads to tangible outcomes will become clearer in the weeks to come, but the willingness to meet, to negotiate, and to envision cooperation remains an essential first step.